Howdy, my name is Carl Kohler, proud principal of Atascocita Middle School in Humble ISD, and I would like to thank Fuel Education for this opportunity to share my vision in about 10 minutes. In June 14th through 15th in 1919, the first non-stop transatlantic flight took 16 hours and 12 minutes. Over the course of the next couple decades, engineers tried to tweak the fuselage, the wings, the propeller, and reduce the time of that flight by fractions. But in February 21st, 1951, the first jet-powered aircraft took 4 hours and 37 minutes for that same flight. In my opinion, the current state of education, which has been going on for the last couple decades, which is powered by the teacher, is this jet-powered airplane. But in my opinion, if we transition to more of the control of the learning process to the child, we'll see this huge revolution in change in our education. Atascocita Middle School has 1,230 students, and our district 2 years ago set forth a vision of developing a portrait of a graduate, which would allow students to develop skills of being a global citizen, communicator, personally responsible, creative innovator, leader and collaborator, and critical thinker, which opened the doors for this opportunity for Atascocita Middle School. So we created our own vision that AMS, learning is personal, individual needs, individual passions. And our mission statement is building a community of learners that meets the individual needs and passions of the students that we serve. In traditional instruction, primarily the information flows through the teacher to the individual students with the same amount of time for that learning task, and each student produces an outcome to demonstrate their learning in the same way. In personalized instruction, there's many different types of inputs, whether it's technology, traditional instruction, the school, or globally through speakers and experts. Each student learns at a different rate, and then they're able to produce their learning and demonstrate their learning in a variety of different ways. What I envision is that public education moving forward would have two parallel pathways. One parallel pathway would be classical instruction, basically the best of brick and mortar schools, which is based around the social support, the students and the teachers working together, doing real world problem-based activities, which I'm going to call anchored lessons, which allow them to apply, analyze, create, and evaluate. This could be things like labs, Socratic seminars, and debates. Another parallel pathway is modern instruction, which would be driven by strategic use of technology or online learning that would be provided by Fuel Education. And this is what's the best of what we're seeing in homeschooling, is that we see self-pacing. We have meeting the specific needs of each individual student, whether it's their strengths and their weaknesses, and providing different pathways for the students. While both of these pathways are going on, the primary role of the teacher is coaching and feedback, whether in these live in-person activities and tasks, or whether it's through online learning. The teacher's providing feedback of helping students know where they are now and how they're going to get there. And they'll use standards-based data, which I'll talk about soon, to help in that coaching and feedback. And there's this constant cycling back of going back to things that a child does not understand, which is our data-driven instruction. This pathway basically shows in any learning that there is a certain standard that students are learning. There's formative assessment. If a student is proficient, then it's yes. If there's no, then there's a certain level of intervention that must be provided, additional instruction, additional reassessment. And then if students are proficient, then they're able to go on to the next unit of instruction. This is very difficult in traditional instruction because you have about 150 to 170 students in each class that are on different levels of understanding. Some are proficient and some are not. Some are pacing through this flowchart at different rates. What Fuel Education can do and what modern instruction through technology can use is that it can facilitate moving students through these pathways at different rates and different pacing. While some students are proficient, are able to pace forward and move on, some students are not proficient and must go through loops of additional instruction and reassessment until they become proficient. I'm going to talk about these terms quite often over the next couple minutes, but grades should be useful, timely, and actionable for all stakeholders. Useful meaning a student or a parent can interpret it and use it. Timely, it must come back to them in a timely manner so that they can respond to it. And actionable, grades should be presented in a way that students can immediately act on it to grow in areas that they struggle in. Here's an example. In a traditional report card, students will receive one grade, which is 80, and this is not very useful. It would be more useful for students to receive grades based on their standards. So in this case, in a U.S. history course in Texas, there's 3 standards that I've selected. As you can see, this is a little bit more useful to parents, students, and teachers because they could see the level of proficiency or the level of mastery of understanding. I've color-coded yellow to show that this student is approaching a level of proficiency, while green is either they are proficient or they have mastered. An even greater level of detail, which could be even more useful to students, parents, and teachers, is if for each task, you can see here 8.4a, you can see a level of understanding for this student. 8.4b, you can see another level of understanding in 8.4c. So clearly this student is doing well and has progressed well in this standard. They are doing poorly in 8.4b, but then they are showing mastery in 8.4c. So the greater level of detail is more beneficial to students, parents, and teachers. What I envision is that every student for every standard would have a heat map where a student will be able to see their level of proficiency for the whole course, for each strand of learning, and then for each standard, a student, parent, or teacher could see the level of understanding. In this case, mastery would be dark green, light green would be proficient, where we'd like every student to be, progressing would be yellow, and needs improvement would be in red. What I envision is that when students are able to see this heat map, they would be able to, and this is the actionable piece of this, they would be able to click on any one of these standards where they would like to show additional growth and progress. Click on these standards and it would immediately take them to a pathway which would help them provide additional instruction and additional assessment to show growth and progress. So as you can see, the TEKS are critical. All instruction and assessment hinges on the standards, whether it's units and lessons that they're planned, tasks where there must be alignment in content and rigor with the Texas essential knowledge and skills, that assessments, whether it's formative, which is early in the learning process to inform students and teachers of students' early levels of learning, or whether it's summative, where after they've had time to practice and demonstrate their learning. And these TEKS are also seen in how information is informed through grades, communicated through grades, and also through reports. Whether that report is to all stakeholders, it's given to students by group, but as long as it shows that it shows growth over time. So TEKS are extremely important to this process. Some bottom lines or must-haves that you may have inferred through this short slide is that all instruction, units, lessons, assessments, all of them must be tagged by the TEKS standard so that a teacher can select a group of standards where a child is struggling and direct that student to receive additional instruction or assessment. Or, as you saw in the heat map, a student can select a standard and receive additional support in that pathway. As you saw lots of colors. In our experience, we are seeing that students respond better to colors than to scores. So students want to move toward proficiency and mastery. So if we presented colors of red, yellows, and greens, students will continue to strive to improve in those areas. Because research says that grades should be motivational and intrinsic and lead students to want to grow and progress. And we have seen that when we score our tests with colors, that students are more likely to do that. This one thing